This is The Stuff Dreams Are Made Of. I'm writer-collector Ryan Condal.
And I'm writer-collector Dave Mandel. Good morning, Ryan, or good evening, good afternoon.
Good evening, Dave. It's light, as you can see. I have some residual daylight pouring in because in London the
I was about to say these are the 3 days of the year where you get light in London. That's beautiful. I love that.
The sun is staying up. We had a beautiful weekend. It was a bank holiday weekend. The coronation is coming. We're going to have a new king officially. But it was a beautiful weekend. It was our first good weather since Halloween.
This has nothing to do with props, but there was a fascinating article in the New York Times about coronation chicken. Are you familiar with coronation chicken? This was something that was invented, I guess, for Queen Elizabeth. It's sort of changed a little bit over the years. And I guess it's become just a real lunch staple, like sandwiches and stuff. It looks like a really nice, like a curry chicken salad. That was my take on it. And so your mission, I'm fascinated by it. I read this article in the Times and I'm now fascinated by it. So your job this week is to eat some coronation chicken, please. I want you. Okay. I'm curious. Okay, I'm just fascinated by it. It looks delicious. I don't know. Maybe it's not. We'll ask our guest. We'll ask our guest when he gets on. Yeah, we'll find out. Yeah,
I will make it happen. Yes, we have a very British guest today, so he can answer all of our coronation questions. Although no one was alive for the last coronation, so
well, no. But I mean, like I said, it's become a staple. It's become a real part of, I think, culture. So yeah. Anyway.
Yeah,
I'm curious.
Very good.
I think you can get it at Preda, whatever, where everyone eats in London. I don't know.
Yes,
Manger,
Preda, Manger.
Yeah. Manger. Okay, yeah.
You just gotta say
what's new in props? What's new in props? This is no longer the
first
New York Times
I
cooking
do have
show.
What's new. I do have what's new in props, but before that, I have a bone to pick with you. I have a bone to pick with my co-host Dave Mandel.
Yep,
you were on one of the biggest podcasts in the universe this week.
Not my fault.
And you didn't plug our podcast.
It was unpluggable. I thought he was going to ask me, and he never did. Yeah.
You son of a bitch. Dave did 2 hours on Mark Maron this week, and it was wonderful. It was a great episode.
I appreciate that.
I love those. I've listened to a couple of your long form interviews, and I love Mark. I listen to him. I sort of listen to him selectively when he has a guest on.
I was about to say I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of his and of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely gotten to the point now where I check out people that I'm more interested in than others, if that makes any sense. But I love it. I've always wanted to do that show. I desperately wanted to do it on Veep, and I never was allowed to go on. I never got the yes, and then I was so excited when I got the yes on this. But you are, he is the maestro. I don't. There was no hey, can we plug? There was no whatever.
Yeah. Or what else are you working on? What's next for you, Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get it, but still, I held on to the end of the hour, but no, you did a great job. You were deeply entertaining, and as well as I know you, I did learn new stuff about you.
That's
particularly
what Becky
early
says too.
SNL days.
My wife listens and goes like, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So that's always exciting. Yeah.
Does she listen to the Stuff Dreams Are Made Of though?
Absolutely not.
No. Because she would learn a lot about you here.
Yeah,
too.
Stuff she does not want to know. But anyway, yeah.
This is the stuff she doesn't want to know.
What did you learn? You learned just more about my SNL days, like my.
I think
job
SNL early Dave.
Yep.
Sort of Lampoon days and how that all worked. And you've spoken about that generally, but I feel like I knew more about you from getting hired on Seinfeld and on, and I knew more of those kind of stories. And I like the little anecdote about you interviewing with Larry and sort of getting the job without having to
getting the job and then
having never
and then getting the job a second time later, sort of.
Then he liked your first pitch and said, "Okay, you're hired again." And I really like that. But no, anybody who's a fan of Dave 10, listen to Mark Maron.
All two of you.
Past couple of weeks, it was the episode from the last week of April for anybody looking for it. But it's deeply entertaining. So well done. Even though I was pissed
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Not just screaming the Stuff Dreams Are Made Of.
I got it in some of the other White House plumbers' various press. I have managed to get it in places.
Oh, good.
Not as many as any of us would have liked.
Good man.
Yeah. No, I've definitely tried to get it in where I can. But yeah, no, it's a hard U-turn.
Yes, it is.
It really is. Yeah.
I was actually in a meeting.
Speaking of political corruption,
That's right.
Speaking of Watergate and Nixon, you know what Nixon loved? Movie props. And you know
what? I broke into the costume locker after my show. I was actually in a meeting this week related to nothing, but I was in a meeting this week with HBO or I guess Warner Discovery, whatever, consumer products people, and our producer at some point in the lull in the meeting said, Ryan has a podcast. And it's
wow, that must have been some
eyebrows went up and put me right on the spot. And I was like, yes, I'm a deep and desperate nerd. And they were actually momentarily fascinated. I don't know they're going to do anything with it, but
when do the products launch? Let me know when the products launch.
It was sort of like the tone of it was like my disappointed mom sort of bringing it up. Ryan has a podcast.
Well, there's ways of delivering that, like almost like blaming you. Like, I'm sorry, we're not prepared for this meeting. Ryan has a podcast, like that, that kind of thing.
I'm sorry, the show's not better.
Yeah,
Ryan has a podcast.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we're running a couple of weeks behind. Ryan has a podcast. Yeah, so
I'm sorry you couldn't scan Damon's armor because Ryan has a podcast. It's not there.
Oh, you're not liking season 2? Well, Ryan has a podcast. Yeah.
Good.
No one ever says, "Oh, you're loving season 2." Ryan has a podcast.
Yeah, that's right.
I want that. What about that? Yeah,
that might be the new T-shirt. Just Ryan has a podcast in the back. So good. So my actual what's new in props is we had an exciting episode.
It was a continuation, by the way, of the last show. Assuming these are airing in some sort of order, you may remember I was bidding on. I was live bidding on Julian's auction, but you had bid earlier or later, but you had auto bid, right? Or you had put in a number, basically. You tell your story, but you had a win as well. So just to connect it to that, yeah.
Yeah, so Dave very excitingly won some Biker Scout gloves live on the air. First for the Stuff Dreams Are Made Of, and I was pursuing the 2 suits from the original Men in Black film, Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith's black suits, the eponymous black suits of the film, and I thought the auction was going to go quite late. But actually, they ended up coming earlier than I expected. So I did not phone bid, but I text bid with Jason DeBoard, who is the COO. He has a very high. We've had him on the podcast before. A very high up title there at Julian's, and helped me.
I think his title has only gone higher since the last time we had him on. He just keeps getting.
Yeah, it's Grand Poobah now. But yes, thank you to Jason, and I won both suits. Actually, for I did quite well on it. I thought, given what some other things in that auction were going fairly crazy. A couple lots before mine went, there was a signed poster from the original Alien that had Sigourney Weaver, and look, Ian Holm, John Hurt, I think a couple of deceased actors.
There's definitely some deceased gentlemen on it. Yeah,
$35,000.
Yeah, I saw that. That was
US,
nuts,
which blew me out of the water. Well, I was like, I guess we're not getting any suits tonight because
and you're lucky that there's no photo of Harpo Marx wearing the suits with his dick out, or God knows what those things would have gone for. I mean, that would have been insane.
Apparently,
yeah.
Apparently, Harpo Marx's racy photos did very well.
It was a huge hit.
God, love those Marx brothers.
No, I thought you got. I guess and this rarely happens. You and I had sort of spoken before the auction, talked about a number to put on them, and the number was definitely sort of what we'd like them and what we'd think they should go for, but we were prepared for the number to go crazy higher. And basically, you got it for the number we were more or less sort of right under, right, like a touch under, basically, of your high. Basically, wasn't that it, more or less?
Yeah. And my high was not very
rarely happens,
high above the estimate or the low end bid. Just because they're suits, and I probably won't display them for a while just because of the space needed and whatever. But I love that film. Have never had anything from it, and again, it's just a suit. But because the movie is about this is the last suit you'll ever wear, I just thought it was
that first
wonderful.
Movie is just truly fantastic. And
yeah.
While the later movies, whatever, I don't think they necessarily hurt it in any way, shape, or form. But now you do need 2 pairs of sunglasses. And two
Ventura
silver
watches,
something, 2 silver something.
Yeah,
you gotta get the
hardware.
watches too. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You definitely need. You don't necessarily have to have the guns, but it does feel like you need some guns, right? Like something like.
Yeah, and a flashy thing.
Neuralizer,
Need a flashy thing.
Those few and far between. But anyway, that's fantastic.
Yes.
I was thrilled. Yeah, that was excellent.
Yes,
excellent.
Good win. Dave, what's new in props this week for you?
I won one other item. So I won the gloves that you saw.
Oh, okay.
I did not win. If you can remember, I think I talked about this last week. I did not win
the Schwartz,
the liquid Schwartz, which just went from,
yeah.
I don't know. I guess for one that was not the one, and one where there's, a big display, and I did like it. It just felt high to me. But then, of course,
Yeah.
I ended up going higher than I wanted to go, and I did win one of the Ron Cobb
Oh, right.
drawings of it's the alien airlock, which was one of the drawings that in there was, I don't want to say it was one of the finished drawings, but it was one of the more fully realized ones in terms of this is what he drew, this is what it looked like on set. It was a very, you know what I mean? It was one of the ones that sort of was more fully realized. Some of the drawings looked like you could see the journey, like, they took this and then eventually it became something else. And so I really did like it. And I won it. I was very happy I won it. But of course, at that point, I was like, oh, maybe I should have won the liquid Schwartz. But anyway, one of those sort of situations. But I was very happy.
No,
so I'll put it that way.
I think that those are great.
Yeah.
I was staring at all of them, and then I was doing that. Am I ever going to put this in a frame and hang it up? I went through all that math and just ultimately just backed away from them. But I think they're fantastic, and I know the one you're talking about, and that to me felt more like a finished idea, and it felt evocative of
that's what it felt like to me.
Whereas
and I don't have a lot of Cobb art because, well, who would have a lot of Cobb art? But I have a couple of pieces. So I felt like, and I did definitely go through am I going to put this on a frame on the wall? That went through my head, and I do really like it. But I did also feel like I have a very nice, again, a very sort of small curated Cobb collection where I have a very cool storyboard from Last Starfighter that has the ship on it. So that's really cool because the ship, I love that design from Last Starfighter. I have a nice Star Wars piece of an early iteration of Hammerhead when he drew it for his own work. It was an alien that he had done in his own sort of sci-fi work and then stole from himself and brought over to Star Wars. So that's really cool. And another odds and end or two. I think I have a political cartoon because he was you can check out, there's these wonderful books of his political cartoons. Really interesting stuff. So those were on eBay for a while. Yes. They're in the books.
It's in his recent book. That get a bit into his political cartoon life. I love the one of the guy dragging the television across like the moonscape. That's always sticks out in my brain. Yeah.
So anyway, so now I have my little Ron Cobb dream collection. So I was very happy for. I don't know, for an auction. I don't know, again, it sort of, I think we said this, it popped up out of nowhere, and it was a delight. So thank you.
Yeah. And I have to say, we have to print a retraction or an apology, I guess. We criticized the handling of the Die Hard storyboards. And Jason told me somewhat in a victorious tone after that they had listed hundreds of Die Hard storyboard lots, sort of one at a time,
with no pictures in the catalog, although pictures online. But
online, but an entire set of them, essentially the entire film told in storyboard format. And Dave and I were like, this is never going to work, and how are you going to bid on this? They made the consignor $300,000 by selling the storyboards that way. And I think the consignor expected it maybe a couple $100 or a couple $1,000 when they consigned them. So certainly they were thrilled. Jason's victorious, and we were very wrong.
I'm going to double down. I think if they'd done it properly, they could have clearly made $1 million. So there you go.
There you go.
Yeah,
there you go. There's always more money.
Spoon-fed them out very slowly over the last couple, whatever. There's no way of knowing I'm not right. So
over
there
the
you
next
go.
20
Maybe
years.
I'm right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. $1 million. So there you go. I'm right.
Yeah. So tonight we have no good segue, but tonight we are joined by a third podcaster. So very exciting because it means he knows how to use his computer and speak into the microphone and enunciate clearly and let others talk. And we're excited to have him on. Both Dave and I have been individually on his podcast and talked about our lives and careers. And even as we'll talk about, even though Jamie himself is not a collector of original movie memorabilia, he's a collector of stories, of original movie stories. And he runs this podcast called the Filmumentaries podcast. And anybody that's been paying attention to the world of making of and behind the scenes would know his Filmumentaries series, where he kind of makes his own behind the scenes making of films based on the existing making of material that's out there and kind of, I would say, I wonder what his term is. We'll find out. Repurposes the stuff for kind of and centralizes it, makes it a centralized version of it, and tells his own story of the making of with the existing material and some things that he adds in his own research as he goes along. Fascinating guy. He's also presently making a documentary about Joe Alves. Sorry, we'll also get a clear pronunciation on this.
No?
Yeah.
No?
The production designer from Jaws. So want to hear about that. But again, just a super interesting guy. And Dave and I have talked a lot about our love for the making of world, and I think we can get into that tonight. So everybody, please welcome Jamie Benning. Jamie, step into the studio.
Hey, Jamie, how are you?
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it feels like the circle is complete, doesn't it? We've been on everybody's podcast now.
Yeah, every iteration.
The triangle is complete. Yeah.
Well, I guess at some point now, Ryan and I can come
isosceles
together onto your podcast, but together next. We'll keep it going.
Now, we do all the combinations.
and then we'll bring you back, and you just bring another person that we don't even know who. You just keeps it going.
Podcaster.
Yeah.
Mark Maron.
Yeah. Sure.
Jamie, Ryan, that was a beautiful introduction. I think that was like one of our best introductions ever. But what I was going to say was, on our show, where we constantly are telling our audience to do their research, that is our sort of, first commandment of prop collecting. In a huge way, you're the research. You are some of the do your research. I mean, in a wonderful way, that the making of stories, the stories you tell, sometimes, pictures, the pieces you find, however you want to talk about that, is really elemental to prop collecting, which, so thank you. But we should start off by saying right off the bat, you are not a collector. You have no movie prop. You are not a movie prop collector.
No, I mean, just to my left here, I do have some Kit West teams storyboards from Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I obtained about 15 years ago.
All right.
Some of which have some kind of like biro pen drawn on to. I think one of them is where the ark is opened and the lightning goes through the soldiers, and somebody's got a biro and made a line with the biro to show where the visual effect's going to be. But that's where the lightning should go. I've got to something. Yeah, that's as close as I've got to a prop. I do have a couple of helmets, but one that my friend made, Boba Fett, from a cycling helmet and some foam and stuff. And I have a Stormtrooper helmet, which a follower of mine made a mess of when he was making a cast. And he said, you can have it if you want. The front looks fine. So I have that up on my shelf. And in terms of other collecting things, I do have, just over here, actually, to my right, I have some original Kenner figures, some of which are from my childhood, some of which are, ones I've got since. But
was Star Wars the gateway for you? Was it like watch Star Wars, had the figures, fell in love, and then other movies came from that?
Yeah, exactly. I was born in 76, so I don't remember a time without Star Wars. Within a couple of years, I had the bedspread and the curtains and the pictures and the figures and the books and everything else. And like you guys, I'm sure, we pored over those things because we couldn't get in the theater again. And then, just as the years went by, kind of got turned on to the making of behind the scenes stuff. In fact, it was when I went to see Return of the Jedi for my 7th birthday. I was taken to the Dominion Theatre in London, which I believe was one of the few cinemas showing it in 70mm.
Ooh,
and
nice.
We went to Hamleys beforehand, and there's this photo of me and my sister and my cousins and my parents, and I've just got these huge stuffed bags from Hamleys with like an AT-AT and a Snowspeeder and I think probably Bib Fortuna and a couple of, the card backs with the blanked out Ewoks and all of that. And then we went to see Return of the Jedi. And as we came out after seeing the film, my parents said, as we went through the lobby, you can pick a book each. There was a book stand there.
I just put on Do Not Disturb. Sorry. Hang on. All
right. I'm dying to know how this story ends.
It's not. It feels like it's not going to be as big, as interesting.
I bought the book.
I bought the book. No. As we came out of the screening of the movie.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you now too, Jamie, but I was going to say, so, we had a giant production problem. The studio was on fire, and Ryan has a podcast. Didn't answer his phone,
Now it's got to go in.
That's got to go in.
All right, take 7, Jamie. Go ahead.
Take
please.
7. So we were coming out the screening, and in the
wait a second, you were coming out of the screening? What happened?
I waited till the end of the credits and everything. And there was this book stand, and I was allowed to buy a book. And I bought the red Return of the Jedi magazine book, which had the story of the film. My sister bought the making of book, the collector's edition, I think it was called. And on the train journey on the way home, we kind of slid the books across the table on the train to each other, had a little swap. And that was the moment where I kind of went, oh my goodness, Michael Pangrazio, Phil Tippett, Ken Ralston, Dennis Muren, and fell in love with the process of the making of the films instead.
Have you ever collected anything? Sorry, I'm just more, I always love the collect, because we have this sort of, people are collectors or they're not. And I obviously you have your figures and stuff, but like, were you ever any kind of a collecting? I don't know, I was about to say baseball cards, but I realized baseball card, whatever the equivalent of baseball cards in the UK.
Well, there isn't one in the UK, really.
Soccer cards? I don't know, football cards? I don't know, but were you ever any kind of a collector, coin collector, stamp collector, anything? Or it's just not, that gene is not you?
It's definitely there. I have to be careful with it because when I get into something, I really get into something, and I'm aware that it could end up to financial ruin. So,
okay, fair enough.
If I find myself dipping a toe in that world, I kind of back up slowly. I think, at one time, I think when I was about 16, I rediscovered with a friend of mine, we rediscovered our childhood collection of the Star Wars figures, and that would have been the early 90s when the Stephen Sansweet book came out, from concept to screen to collectible, which I think turned on a lot of people to them again. And I got super into just collecting anything with the Star Wars emblem on it. And it became apparent quite quickly that I was going to soon run out of money. So, I backed off.
So that was that's the same reason that I have never collected any monkey radiator caps. That was my
very, very wise, by the way. You'd be bankrupt. Yeah. No, I mean, if we go on strike, and this strike lasts, like a year or two, there's going to be a huge monkey radiator cap auction for me to try and recoup. But anyway,
not Star Wars
hope
props.
Not.
You're hanging on to those.
Let's hope not. No,
sell the house first.
Yeah, no, the monkey radiator caps are number one onto the auction block, but hopefully that won't have to happen. But so making ofs, that's truly your love, and really. This is a very funny thing to say. So obviously podcasting is the last couple of years. What were you doing with your love of like sort of making ofs until you actually could put it out there in the world of the internet and podcasts? Like what were you just like, it was like a full part-time job kind of a thing of like just researching and whatnot? Like how did it express itself as you were getting older?
Before the podcast, I think it was 2006. I just kind of had there was this moment where, the democratization, I guess, of filmmaking had arrived in terms of post-production. I could get Final Cut Pro was cheap. I had a Mac, enough money to buy a Mac that could run Final Cut Pro. And it suddenly occurred to me that I could make my own making of documentaries or filmumentaries, as I ended up calling them, a word I've kind of stuck with. It makes no sense whatsoever. But if you try and type it on Google, it's the only thing that comes up. So,
which is, by the way,
I think it's a great title.
Which is good.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of went down this rabbit hole of just trying to find everything I could on The Empire Strikes Back, because I'd seen, the making of Star Wars, which had been on over here on the BBC, I think, and maybe in PBS or ABC in the States many, many times. And I'd seen from Star Wars to Jedi, the making of a saga, which was the Mark Hamill narrated documentary. Right. But what I hadn't really seen is a good, straightforward making of The Empire Strikes Back. There was that one called SPFX, The Empire Strikes Back, which had Mark Hamill in this very fetching tank top or vest, as you'd call it, standing in a cinema talking to camera and then showing kids animating dinner plates with R2-D2 on them in stop motion. And it showed clips of old movies. And I was like, look, I need a hardcore kind of Empire Strikes Back making of. So I went about trying to collect everything I could. What I will say really quickly,
I don't think people realize what this was like, though. And again, if you go back into like whatever the late 70s, early 80s, when those things did air on television, they were only on regular television, like what we call network television. But when like the Jedi one was on, there was the Raiders of the Lost Ark, stunt one. I can't remember what it was called, but those things would air on television, and those were events unto themselves. Like those 1 hour specials were like, we built our evening, our week around it, because there was like a sense of, this is going to air once. There were no recorders, there were no DVRs, and it was just sort of like, I'm going to sit there, I'm going to try and take this all in, and like never going to see this thing again. And in a way that was, those things were huge. And then of course you look back on them now and you go, well, there's interesting parts to them, but they weren't exactly very forthcoming. But anyway, yeah. So sorry, keep going. But just
I would
us all. Yeah.
Yeah, I would pore over, we had a TV guide here called the Radio Times, which, had TV stuff in and radio listings in as well. It's still around today. And I would pore over that. I used to spend like Saturday afternoons at my grandparents quite often, me and my sister, and we would pore through that and just check out, oh, look, there's a making of Temple of Doom or something. And I think we just about had a VCR then. So we would watch those things again and again. And some of those documentaries, they would show you things like, in the Raiders one, they'd show you things like Steven Spielberg staging the drinking scene in Marion Ravenwood's bar, which was a real insight into the craft, things you hadn't seen before. And what I always loved was that moment where they cut from some kind of crappy TV camera, or maybe a 16mm camera at the time, to the clip of the movie. So I had this idea with my first filmumentary, which I called Building Empire, to kind of make the ultimate making of, and have those things sat in context, so as you watch the movie that you're also watching the movie that and love being made at the same time. So it takes the timeline of the movie, and I would intersperse it with all of this stuff. It became initially it becomes like a 2D puzzle. You think, okay, well, this bit just goes here, that bit goes there, and then you think, oh, I've got a different version of that bit because it was on a Norwegian making of, or a German making of, or a French making of. And this is what happened. I would start collecting this stuff.
And so you're just tracking down basically anything that has footage, anything that has a still that you've never seen before, any information, basically. You're kind of like a central gathering spot of one movie at a time. Yeah.
It seems to me almost like those old like pop-up videos that VH1 used to do, Dave, where they would like run the video, and then info bubbles would come up, and this guy, he was actually arrested 2 years later for indecent exposure or whatever. It's sort of like a, I don't know, it's like it is prescient in a way, because it feels like the way you would do an interactive kind of menu feature now on like a digital or streaming movie, from an era when that stuff wasn't available, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, I was told later that one of the studios used to do this thing on DVDs and Blu-rays called Ultimate Movie Mode or something, and things would pop up, and apparently they were inspired by what I'd done. But the thing I really kind of fell in love with this idea that I'd get, like I say, this 2-second clip from a German documentary, and then I'd find this 2-second clip from a British documentary, and oh wow, they actually segue completely together. They join, and now you've got 4 seconds, and then you get one that was aired in France once, and some guys got it on a videotape, and I'd swap my one for his one. He'd send me like a DVD or even a VHS at the time, and I'd be able to put all this stuff together. They'd be from different television standards. There'd be different kind of color grading on them, different qualities. But really, the quality wasn't really the biggest issue for me. It was about finding stuff that people hadn't seen before. Right. And what I wanted was for people to watch this movie. And we all know when we watch, Empire Strikes Back, we know every music cue, we know every piece of dialogue, and we know what's coming next. It's like when you get a certain way into a song, you know the words that are coming next. I wanted people to kind of be jarred and go, hang on, what's this? I've not seen, this is a different take.
Right. What's that line? Where'd that come from? Or like the inflection's different. Yeah.
Well, like the 8mm version of The Empire Strikes Back had a lot of the 70mm versions of the takes in it. So there's a different bit. I think when Han Solo is going back to base on his Tauntaun, he says a slightly different line. There's a different take. I think it was on the LP that was released, The Story of The Empire Strikes Back. So there's all of this stuff I was kind of discovering as I went along. And what I ended up with is this kind of, bastardized version of The Empire Strikes Back with all these things that maybe deleted scenes you hadn't seen before. I dug out, by the time I did Star Wars Begins, which was on the first Star Wars movie, which I still call Star Wars, as I'm sure you do, I dug out this old CD-ROM, called Behind the Magic or something
Oh,
like that.
I remember that thing. It was
scenes
in the purple box. I remember that thing. Yeah.
And it had like the big scenes on it, which we'd never seen before at the time. And a guy I knew managed to get them off there. And, I was putting all this stuff together. And I actually got a message from somebody one morning when I released Star Wars Begins. And it just said, I can't tell you who I am. I work within Lucasfilm and we are all watching this.
Oh, wow.
That's amazing.
That was pretty cool. I mean, to be able to sort of feed back into that world. And, Mark Hamill's son, Nathan, showed Mark some of it as well, which was very cool. And because I think that's what I do is it's what it's all about. And I'm guessing for you as well, it's just being able to get closer to those movies in a way and, just feel like you can exist in that world in some way.
Yeah, and express your love in whatever way, whatever way, whether it's a poster or in our case, a real Stormtrooper helmet. Now, so because we sort of skipped over this part, but
or 3 real Stormtrooper helmets.
In your case, Dave, yes, thank you. Yes,
or a really sort of melted one that some guy just sent me. Yeah,
whatever it is. So we sort of skipped over this part, Jamie. But your day job, the way you actually earn your living, because as we know, podcasting is not the road to riches, unless you're Mark Maron or Joe Rogan.
Wait, I'm sorry, forgive me. It is or it isn't the road to riches? I'm sorry, I had an earphone problem. What is it? It is or it isn't? What did you say?
Jamie put together a filmumentary on it. You can check it out later. All the secrets are within. But you're essentially in post production. You're an editor, and
live production actually. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So where were you trained in this and then you exploited that to make the filmumentaries? Did the filmumentaries come out of your love and you self-taught and then you found your way into doing it as a career? How did it all kind of come together?
Well, I had a really weird path, actually. I worked for the government for 5 years in a job which I cannot talk about.
Ooh,
I know that sounds weird. If I did, I would have to end this call. No, I'd have to find you and take you down.
Only 5 people are listening. This is a very safe place.
I can answer yes or no to your question.
Okay. Does it involve coronation chicken? Yes or no?
Yes, weirdly it does.
Do you like coronation chicken? Can I ask you that?
No,
have you had?
No.
You don't.
It's very 1980s kind of. Yeah, it's very old school. If you do want to go and get one of those sandwiches, Marks and Spencer's is probably your best bet, Ryan. David, if you're over here, yeah, it's part of that institution.
But it is like a kind of a curry chicken, what I would call a chicken salad with like raisins and stuff in it, right? Yeah,
it's like almost like a korma light curry flavor. Yeah, but it doesn't belong between bread. It's just, I mean, come on.
Well, I think originally, if I understood curry. When she was actually the actual coronation, it was originally, I think, more of a dinner dish, and it kind of transformed into the current. Anyway, fascinating article.
So,
but yeah.
So the peasants were able to have it between two slices of bread.
And feel very royal as they were watching.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, Marks and Spencer, that'll be that's good to know. Well, that's fascinating. So a government job, very interesting.
Yeah. So I kind of had this job, and I was there 5 or 6 years, I think. And what I really wanted to do was get into TV and film. Film was what I wanted to get into. I was 22, 23 by this time. And I actually ended up using a government database to search for every company in the UK with the words TV and film in them. And I wrote them all, every one of them, a letter. And I got a reply from a company that happened to be an outside broadcaster working on sport and concerts and music festivals and regular TV shows, cookery shows, whatever. And I went for an interview and they said, I went for a chat. They said, we don't have a job, but you're local and you're cheap. And by this time I was doing a part-time degree in media production. I was working full-time, funding myself part-time for 4 years, doing this media production, BSc. And they said, look, when you're finished with that, come back to us. And I did. And it so happened that a guy was leaving and they invited me to the Silverstone Grand Prix. They were contracted to do some of the live production jobs for Formula One at the time. And this guy who was leaving kind of showed me the ropes of doing live replays and building edits that were going to go to air within seconds, proper seat of your pants editing. And he said, look, I'm going to go for a sleep now. You're on air, by the way. And I got through this session and the boss said, you did really well there. Do you want to come to Spain next week? And within 12 months, I'd been to 17 countries.
Wow.
And it kind of took off. That lasted for 2 years. Can I ask
one question about those 2 years really quickly? Because that's just beyond fascinating. At any point when there was like a slow moment, did you ever show them like The Empire Strikes Back or The Star Wars Begins, or like did they have any idea that this was going on? Also, like
that came later.
Okay, so that's later. Okay.
Yeah, but by the time I'll get around to that in just a sec, because I was going to say that lasted for a couple of years. They lost the contract with Formula One, and the pay-per-view for Formula One model was like too early. Nobody was really doing pay-per-view then. The idea was good, it just wasn't the right time. A few years later, Formula One decided they were going to start doing the broadcast themselves as the host. So rather than the Brazilian TV company do the Brazilian Grand Prix, where they follow the Brazilian driver for 72 laps, they thought, well, if we do it, we can create some impartiality and make a more sort of measured broadcast, a fair broadcast. So we started doing that in 2004, and they invited me back. In the interim gap there, which was about a year, I ended up working for a company called London Editing Machines, who supplied Steenbecks and Chem film benches, and Lightworks and Avid at the time was just creeping in. I ended up working on support on Big Fish, the Tim Burton movie.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
I set up Walter Murch's film bench for Cold Mountain.
Oh, wow.
Written by John August, Jamie, fellow podcaster, John August, with a much larger podcast audience than we have.
Huge.
Yes,
it's neither here nor there. Yeah.
And what was that other movie, Hero? Do you remember the sort of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon kind of...
yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was sort of hanging on the coattails of that bit. And then I got invited. That job was a kind of dead end. It was driving around the West End, trying to get chems in tiny lifts in, elevators in West End post-production facilities. And I realized at this time I was like 25, and I was almost too late to get into the editing side because I'd had a kid by then and I was married. And I saw people sleeping under these film benches, working for Tim Burton and so on.
Right. You were not prepared to be like a assistant editor and like sleeping there. Yeah, I get that.
It almost happened. And then I got a call saying, we're doing Formula One again. Do you want to come back? We'd love to have you. And on a freelance basis now. So the money was better, and I was kind of sucked into that. And the traveling as well, which I'd been missing for that year. So while I was traveling the world, doing 20 races a year, Malaysia, Singapore, China, we went to India, Turkey, all around Europe, everywhere. Australia. I think I've been to Australia 20 times, which means I've spent a month on planes going to and from Australia. Wow. Middle seat economy. But during that time, I had a lot of time in hotels, on trains, on planes, on coaches, and I was interested in the post-production side of things. So I taught myself Final Cut Pro by making Building Empire. I made Building Empire. I made Returning to Jedi. And then in 2011, after working on it for 4 years, I made Star Wars Begins. 4 years because I'd had a second kid. And as you know, if you've got more than one kid, it isn't addition, it's multiplication.
No, the second one changes everything.
Yeah.
1 is 1 and 2 is 10, as they taught me. Yeah.
Did the international travel help you with the putting it together? Was there ever like a time where like, hey, I'll be in Malaysia, I can trade you those 7 seconds of Princess Leia for 4 seconds, like we can meet in person or anything like that? Did that ever help?
Wouldn't you? But no, I never. Well, actually, I think there was one guy we did swap some DVDs or something in the reception of a hotel in Melbourne, and he was like, I need to come and give you this. But yeah, I definitely should have exploited the travel more than I did. But I released this Star Wars Begins, and it got everywhere. Like it was on the front page. This is how long ago it was. It was on the front page of Yahoo and AOL and Collider, and it was everywhere. And I decided at that time to use my real name instead of this made up name, which I'd done. I think somebody had told me about how to make your Star Wars name. Take the first 3 letters of your first name, the first 2 of your second name, then the first 3 of your mother's maiden name, and the first 3 of the town you were born in. So my name was Jambi Davdar. That's what I would put on these things because I didn't want. I was worried about the copy.
You definitely should have stuck with that.
It rolls off the tongue. I didn't want to get caught out on the copyright side of things, but what's
the final one? The street you grew up on? That's the last one. The street you grew up on?
It's the town grew up in.
So I'm Davman Barnu. Davman Barnu, Ryan.
I'd buy that. I think Mandalorian
right.
season 4. I hear that's a character. Yeah.
So sorry, the first 3 letters.
First 3 of your first name.
Rayacon.
Raycon, and then the first 3 of your mother's maiden name, and the first 3 of the town you were born in.
Bohaz.
Oh, that's a good name.
Raycon Bohaz.
Yeah,
sure.
It's not bad.
I mean, we could have collaborated, couldn't we?
Yeah.
So on this one, I decided to put my real name out there. And that morning I woke up with that email from somebody who was inside Lucasfilm. I think I woke up to like 270 emails of people just saying, oh my God, this is amazing. Where did you find this? How did you do this? And it was that point where I realized that in doing that, I would be able to, invite a lot more people into that circle and find more stuff. So I went about making one for Raiders of the Lost Ark straight off the back of that. And that was the first time I decided to do my own interviews within that as well. So I interviewed Colonel Dietrich, Wolf Kahler.
So you were able to use, if you will, really quickly, you were able to kind of use the, accept the word fame of the Star Wars one to kind of go, these are my bona fides. I would like to interview you. Here's stuff I've done. And people started saying yes. And then, of course, as it goes, the more people say yes, the more people say yes, which is always a very nice thing, I assume.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was like, oh, wow, this guy who did this thing is now doing that thing. So I went about doing Raiders, and I interviewed a couple of people for that. And I'm fortunate in that I'm from London, and I, was able to go up to Elstree Studios a little bit as well as a youngster, just looking from the outside, and I feel like I had a bit of a connection to these movies. That's another thing, I guess, is that, even though these are big American movies, they're also British movies, all of these movies we're talking about, because the crews were predominantly British. And therefore, people that worked on the movies are still in the UK. So I went up to North London and interviewed, Colonel Dietrich in a Costa coffee. And made a mess of the recording, and you can hear nothing but babies crying and cups chinking. But it was, I enjoyed that process of being able to speak to somebody in person about the experience, and also find out some of the stuff that they were never going to let me put on tape. We had some interesting conversations off mic, and I kind of got the bug for that, and within weeks of that being released, it took me a year to make. I made one on Jaws, or I started making one on Jaws called Inside Jaws. And for that one, I managed to engage a guy called Jim Bella, who was, at the time, he had a website called jawscollector.com.
I remember
and he
that.
was very knowledgeable about the film, and he was able to put me in touch with a lot of the extras and behind the scenes people. And, he was making that book with Matt Taylor, which was the Memories from Martha's Vineyard coffee table book. So, my net was spreading wider now, and it was spreading towards people that were involved in the movies. And I really got a kind of a thrill out of being able to speak to, there's this one woman who was the then girlfriend of the props master, and she appears in the scene in the hospital in Jaws, and you see her for a couple of shots. And she then sent me some Polaroids of her and Roy Scheider, which had never been released before, and things like that. And it was,
great.
Sifting through this stuff and just finding, genuine gold, and to play it to Jim Bella, who, seen that film hundreds of times, for him to say, where did you find this? How did you get that?
I've never seen that before. Yeah, that's the highest.
That's so cool. Yeah.
And that's when I started to get kind of approached by studios a little bit. I had a bit of a dalliance with Warner Brothers at one time. We were going to make...
for like DVD, for DVD extras, or for standalone stuff, or a little bit of both?
To take that format. Yeah, a bit of both, really. Weirdly, we talked about this when I interviewed you, Ryan, didn't we, about Brett Ratner. His people got in contact with him and said, he's shooting Hercules in Budapest at the moment. He'd love to have a chat with you. He's seen Inside Jaws and he loves it, and he's starting a documentary wing and a book wing of his company. And I said, well, I'm going to be in Budapest tomorrow, because I was flying there for the Grand Prix, for the Formula One Grand Prix. So I went and visited the location that evening, and he introduced me to everyone about, this is the guy I've been telling you about. He makes these amazing making ofs. And he tried to get Steven Spielberg on the phone at one point, and his assistant called the wrong Steven. And
Steven Merchant.
Yeah,
this is all very on brand for Brett, by the way. Having worked with him for a year, and I will also say,
extreme
Dave,
extreme enthusiasm, and then not being able to get Spielberg on the phone. So yeah, that's about right.
Yes, and very little follow through. But I will say that the great irony of this is that the one person on this podcast was on the set of Hercules, and a different person wrote Hercules. So there you go.
Yeah. It was a crazy time because I was kind of swept up with, he speaks very, very quickly, Brett, and he was on the phone. We were in his vehicle going back to the city, we were about an hour out of Budapest, and he's asking me okay, go. What are your top 5 movies? What are your top 5 Jack Nicholson movies? What are your top 10? Give me your top 10 movies that you'd love to make a documentary on, and we'll make them. Do you want to do some books as well? Can you call my grandpa on the phone? He's just had a stroke. Can you sign? And he's signing stuff, and it was ridiculous. He put me in contact with a guy that did a lot of DVD extra stuff at the time, and we talked about doing something on Chinatown. We put quite a lot of preliminary research in. I actually ended up with Jack Nicholson's phone number via. Actually, I probably shouldn't say who via, and Roman Polanski's address, just this stuff started coming at me. It's like, wow, what's going on here? That didn't work out because at that time, Brett had done that deal with Warner Brothers where he was Rat Pack. He sort of teamed up with James Packer and I think Gravity and a Lego movie. Thing. Yeah, I think they did the 50 movies for Warner Brothers or something. So he went from this director guy to this movie mogul kind of guy within a matter of weeks. And so that didn't work out. And then I had a thing with 20th Century Fox.
Wait, I have to stop you. I want to come back to 20th Century Fox. I'm going to stop you a second because now I'm very curious. Did you start doing any? So you were doing research on Chinatown, right?
I did a proof of concept that was half an hour. Yeah, in the kind of filmumentary format. Yeah, I managed to dig out some stuff from archives over here.
Did you ever get a hold of the original first draft, the really crazy 300-page one? No.
No,
had to ask.
I didn't.
Had to ask. All right.
Yeah,
had to ask. Yeah,
I did. Yeah, it's one of those movies that I've always loved and have always been intrigued by. The story of it because, of course, some crew changed midway through and all of that stuff. And it's kind of interesting to pick out, which shots are from which part of the production because there is some noticeable differences there. But yeah, we dug. I was just left to kind of dig through that, and I came up with this proof of concept, which I think was about half an hour. But that didn't come to fruition, sadly, because of those reasons I said. But then Fox, some friends of mine online, they ran a company that would analyze audiences for movie studios and kind of predict what was going to be the next big thing, just see where audience kind of mood was going. They kind of predicted the whole, big superhero boom and all of that kind of stuff. And they said, look, we've got an in at Fox. One of the execs there, junior execs there, loves your work, and he brought it up in a meeting the other day, and one of the big execs wants to know about it. So we started doing a lot of work on the Planet of the Apes, the original 68 Planet of the Apes, and found all that Roddy McDowall footage. We found a load of stills in archives around Los Angeles. Again, put a proof of concept together. We actually got to the point where we started booking interviews, and bear in mind, I'm still flying around the world at this time, and I was on this 15-hour flight to Singapore and tapping away on my laptop, getting everything ready for the next few months where we were going to start to go into production. And I landed and I got a text message from the executive saying, "I'm so sorry, Jamie, I'm leaving Fox. I hope it works out for you in the future," or something like that. Because as you know, no new exec wants to take over and continue the job that was started by somebody else because they wouldn't get the credit for it. But in a way, that's kind of how I've come full circle around to doing the podcast, years later, because I'd rather do this stuff off my own back in a way, because as soon as you get, entrenched in the studio system, as I'm sure you guys also know a lot about, there's so many hurdles. There was a kind of innocence to what I did previously. I've always said
you're working for someone. I mean, that's obviously a huge thing, and obviously they have a certain agenda. I mean, you never got up against it, but if you had discovered some giant fight on the set of Chinatown, they may not want you to talk about that giant fight on the set. I mean, I'm making this up, but it's a different thing. Yeah.
There were weird things like, the guys at Fox, they were saying, well, we can't use the original soundtrack because we'd have to pay the estates of the performers. But what we did do is we recorded a non-union version of the soundtrack, which you can use. It doesn't quite sound right, but I was like, I'm supposed to be making the ultimate making of it. I'm not going to use some, crappy version of the soundtrack. So, yeah, I kind of felt a bit disillusioned after that, and decided not to kind of pursue any more studios. And at that point, Inside Jaws was my last one. What was that, 2013? We're talking about 10 years ago now. So 2013. I did think about making one on Temple of Doom. I did think about making one on The Thing. The problem is, though, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Star Wars, Raiders, and Jaws, there's plenty in the public domain to draw from that if you put it together in interesting ways, it looks new, which is part of the illusion of what I did. And plus, there's lots of it in people's collections. But when you get to things like The Thing and, I thought about Superman as well. It just felt like, look, I've done enough now to prove that I can do something like this. I don't feel like I need to make another one that's going to take another few years. And, as I've always said, I make no money on these whatsoever. I've never made a single penny on any of these. I can't, because it's not my copyright. And I've never had any studio come to me and say, you need to take this down, because ultimately it's not competing with any product that they've made.
No, it's quite honestly, it's advertising their product. I mean, it's doing nothing but helping, I think, honestly. But yeah, whether they would ever admit that or not is a separate discussion.
People. Yeah, I've shut down people on eBay who've tried to sell my stuff, Right. There were people making money off the back of them, and I went to great lengths to make sure that they didn't continue to do that. But, some cool stuff happened. Like there was a guy who put together some things called the Star Wars Despecialized editions, who returned Star Wars to its original form. Harmy, yeah. A friend of mine as well. And somebody made like a Criterion Collection version of those movies on Blu-ray and put all of my extras on there, which was great.
That's kind of cool.
Oh, that's great.
Because after I did those full-length Filmumentaries, I then went and decided, I'm going to go and shoot some single interviews with people. So I interviewed Dave Barclay, who's the Yoda and Jabba the Hutt puppeteer.
Right.
He's a British guy, lives in LA actually, but he was over here. I managed to get into Madame Tussauds and shoot him next to the Yoda there, which was fun. And then I did one on Robert Watts, the producer.
Yep. Yeah.
And then I did another one on Evil Powell, who was Ridley Scott's right-hand man for a number of years. And then enjoyed doing those interviews, those single interviews, and collecting stories it became about then. Rather than collecting footage, it was about collecting and kind of curating these stories. And of course, lockdown happened and everybody got a podcast in lockdown. So that's where we are now.
That's right. Just another podcast. 3 middle-aged men with a podcast, Jamie. Are you new to collecting props? Where can you go to learn about the hobby? Aside from this fine podcast, Prop Store is the place. Collecting props is a little different from other hobbies.
We're going to start over here because but okay. Don't stop recording. I feel like it's got to be. Are you new to collecting props? Where can you go to learn about the hobby? Aside from
like a monster, monster truck rally.
One more time.
Yeah. Do you want to do?
All right, fine.
Do you want to?
Ready?
Do
Here we go.
Okay.
But we'll just leave this all. Ready? Are you new to collecting props? Where can you go to learn about the hobby? Aside from this podcast, Prop Store is the place. How's that? I think they're going to like that.
Collecting props is a little different from other hobbies, and Prop Store has a number of resources that can help you do your research and learn more. Prop Store has been a leader in helping collectors find authentic pieces for the last 25 years.
25 years!
Here are some things at Prop Store we recommend you check out. Prop Store's auctions. Reading through Prop Store's catalog is a history lesson and education on the hobby. And the live auction events and previews they host are places you can go to interact with other collectors. The next big entertainment memorabilia live auction is coming to Los Angeles June 28th to 30th, 2023, so plan to be a part of it.
I will say those get-togethers are fun. You get to meet people. You get to ask questions. It's a pretty cool thing. Yeah. Prop Store's auction archives.
The best events of the year.
Yeah. Prop Store's auction archives. Go to propstore.com and peruse Prop Store's online auction archives to research what has been sold in the past and how prices have changed over time. That's an understatement. It's an invaluable free resource for you to use. But it is great that they actually have everything up there so that, it's great for upcoming auctions. It's also great in your own collection to kind of go, hey, I have this. I was wondering, is there one like it? Is there something like, what how do I value it for my insurance? Things like that. So I think that's also really super helpful.
Yeah. And I always like to see, did this thing sell before? Did they have it before? Was there another one in a previous auction, you know, and what did that sell for, and what was the description on that, and was it screen matched? Yeah, it's really great to have everything kind of at your fingertips there. They also have videos. You can subscribe to Prop Store's email and social channels to watch new videos every week, giving you insights on pieces that are coming up for sale or pieces from Prop Store's collection. You can also find older videos on Prop Store's YouTube channel, and of course go to Tested and Adam Savage's site, because he goes through those crazy
he'll go there
detailed
and
deep
over,
dives on
Prop Store's
on the pieces in the auctions.
Prop Store's staff: Stephen Lane, Brandon Allinger. Stephen Lane, Brandon Allinger, Chuck Costas, Tim Law, and Gray Smith have all been on this podcast. Yes, they have. And they and their staff regularly make themselves available to talk about your want list, answer your questions, and give new collectors their perspectives on the hobby. If you ever have a question about an item you're interested in buying, you can reach out to Prop Store at support@propstore.com. That's support@propstore.com. They are knowledgeable. They will answer your questions. They are knowledgeable. And believe it or not, they are trying to help, because the sooner you get addicted, the sooner you just start spending crazy money there. So that's a good thing for them.
They also have their Buy Now platform, which is a great place to get started to buy your first prop. There are over 5,000 items for immediate purchase at fair prices. You can also buy copies of printed catalogs from many of Prop Store's previous auctions on the site. So use your Dave 10, or Ryan. Ryan, I was saying right on cue. Discount code, very good. Upon checkout to get 10% off your entire purchase, and vote for your favorite podcast host at the same time.
Have a friend that you think might be interested. Have a friend that you think might be interested in starting to collect props? Send them over to propstore.com today and start their collecting journey. In the course of talking to these people, has anyone ever said, like, look, blah, 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 whatever, Temple of Doom, I've got this indie whip I don't know what to do with. Do you want it? Has anyone ever, like, in their telling of stories, like, held up incredible props where you've been like, holy shit, you took that off the set? I mean, again, you don't have to get into the who, but in the course of those talks,
but not on the podcast. Yes.
Now I know why I'm on the podcast.
And offline, we're going to drug you and chain you down, and no one will see you for Jamie. Months. Yes, yeah.
Do you know what has happened is, because I got to the point of doing these individual interviews a bit late on, most of those guys had already sold their stuff, Sure. I know that Ivor had said, I've still got a few boxes of things, and he brought these boxes up, and there was some cool stuff, like there was a pneumatic tape of the stuff that goes on the screens in the Nostromo, which they recycled for Blade Runner as well, which he still had, and he had like a patch from the 2001 suit and a fabric swatch from the space suits. And he said, I sold all my good stuff. And then he pulls out this script that says Ivor's script, hands off or something. And he opens it up, and it's got all these like hand-drawn little storyboards in the margin of the script that Ridley's done. I said, I think, Ivor, that people would still be interested in that. He said, the one I did sell had a lot more in it than this one does, And I think there is a tendency for those guys of that generation to think, well, it was just my job. I just happened to have this thing still sitting in a box. Who's going to be interested in this? But at the same time, when we're interviewing, I could see the Prop Store catalog from the previous auction sat there, and he had the suit. I think he had the suits that the kids were in for the forced perspective shot. With the
right. Yep, the small ones.
Yeah, and he had one of the maquettes of the space jockey, I think, at one time, and so most of that stuff had gone. I think Robert hadn't had anything around, and Dave, he was 19 when he was puppeteering Yoda. I think he was just so wide-eyed. I don't think walking off the set with anything in his hands even entered his mind. He's just one of the sweetest guys. So it does happen.
Robert Watts did have a bunch of stuff, really good stuff that ended up getting dispersed,
sold it off
into collections.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think that was quite a few years before I got involved. But there is always that feeling that you could have that tantalizing moment where somebody goes, I do have that upstairs somewhere, But yeah, I've had those moments where I interviewed more recently for the podcast. I interviewed Sean Barton, the British editor who'd worked on, did Quadrophenia and did Eye of the Needle, which is a Richard Marquand movie that caught Lucas's eye. Yeah. And he cut Jedi, and he said, "Oh, I've still got the film splicer upstairs and Revenge of the Jedi, a couple of T-shirts around somewhere, you know." And he took me up there, and there's this, you know, splicer, and I was thinking, wow, that's pretty cool to see the thing that film was cut on.
That's great. Phil Daniels, Phil Daniels, a star of Quadrophenias in House of the Dragon. He's our maester.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
He's Maester Gerardus on Dragonstone.
Yeah.
And I remember when he showed up on set, like Matt Smith came running over to me. He goes, "Is that Phil Daniels?" I was like, yeah. Everybody was so excited. It's just fun when, like, you know, you bring in somebody from like the old guard, and then like the young kids get so excited. Yeah.
And I was just gonna say, I had the needle. I was just gonna throw this in. Sorry, I had the needle.
I've never seen it.
Oh my God, so good, so damn good.
Yeah, great.
Like,
okay.
Honestly, great. Like, really, really good. You know,
cool.
You can understand. I mean, I'm not sure you'd watch it and go, give this guy a Star Wars movie, but you definitely would watch it and go, this is great storytelling. I mean, wherever that fits.
Yeah, there's an efficiency to it, isn't there, that I think they probably identified. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, it's on the list. I will do it. Do you think he deserved the job over David Lynch?
It's interesting, that Lynch story, isn't it? You know, we've heard more details about it recently. I mean, he said, there was one clip I saw David Lynch talking about how he was taken to the ranch and he started to get a headache, and, you know, there's all these props everywhere and spaceships, and he said, and then my headache's getting worse, and I thought, I just can't do this movie, you know. And his agent's saying, well, are you kidding? You've got to do this movie. I mean, who knows? You know, we've all seen Dune, so maybe we do know.
Yes, great film from Richard Marquand, I think.
Lynch, although I guess it would have been an interesting thing. I do not see Lynch, like, again, he was a young guy and he might have just made it work, but sort of living under the thumb that was George Lucas at the time.
That operation,
you know, the way that worked, where certainly post Empire, he was very involved and very whatever. And then obviously, you know, the story never quite working, which is really the problem with
unless
Jedi.
He was going to do like a Star Wars version of the straight story, when, you know, Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker gets in a beaten up X-wing to cross the galaxy to find his sibling, you know. I would buy that. Yeah, I like that movie.
Two other topics that I wanted to get into before we lose you. One was is your current project, which is the actual, you know, full-fledged original grown up documentary you're working on. It's Joe Alves, right? It's Alves.
It's Alves. Yeah, he tells me it's Portuguese, not Spanish, so it's Alves, not Alves. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, there you go. And the production designer of Jaws and a million other things, right? And he's been. What was his first movie? He had his crazy first credit, didn't he? That was like he's like the intentional Forrest Gump of the movie world. He's like literally rubbed shoulders with everybody, but, you know, with intention. So I think he was 19. He saw An American in Paris with a girlfriend of his, and they were skipping up the road afterwards. And he decided, he read somewhere that it wasn't actually Paris. It was like, you know, made on a back lot somewhere. And he thought, that's what I want to do. So he had this intention, this kind of shark-like drive to just keep going until he got there. And he arrived in LA, managed to, via a cousin, get a job working for Disney. And he was drawing the cookies for the Sleeping Beauty scene with the fairy godmothers. they're like, you know, Mickey Mouse shape. So he's drawing them. This guy behind him says, that isn't how you draw a cookie, young man. This is how you draw a cookie. And he turns around and it's Walt Disney leaning over him and correcting his work. And he did a lot of the stuff with the thorns as the prince is kind of hacking through the thorns. But he really wanted to get into live action. So he ended up leaving there, and he worked on It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. He worked on Mutiny on the Bounty.
Oh, wow.
You know, he'd be sitting there talking to us in these interviews, because we went and visited him in LA in March last year. And his wife was there, who used to be a production coordinator for the movies as well. And he would say, darling, what was that Elvis movie I worked on? Like, Joe, you worked on an Elvis movie? You know? And then he'd say, I didn't ever see her, but what was the Monroe thing I did, you know? And did I tell you about, I introduced Paul Newman to motor racing? And, you know, we're just sitting there going, oh my God, this. So how it all came about is I interviewed him for my podcast. So my podcast, the Filmumentaries podcast, I just interview people whose work I admire, right? Hence talking to you two guys. And one of them was Joe. And Joe starts telling me some of these stories. And my buddy, who's a big Jaws fan, he says, look, we've got to go and interview this guy. He's like 86. We better get over there, you know, and get these stories down. And we flew over there on our own coin with this intention of just interviewing him and doing a similar sort of thing that I'd done with Dave Barkley and
just
Robert
a single
Watts
interview and just
maybe on the way with, you know, I hope Joe's still got some stuff with saying, you know, I've seen his Instagram. He's got like a little Jaws 3D figure that somebody's made him. So maybe he's got some stuff. We arrive at his house. Him and his wife couldn't have been more accommodating. They brought us in. They took us down to his workshop, and he has everything, like everything. All of his Jaws drawings, his storyboards, Jaws 2. He's got scripts of films that weren't finished, storyboards and artwork of films that were never realized throughout his whole career. You know, he's an artist. He sculpts, he draws, he paints. The house is like the set of his life. And so now what we've got on our hands is not only a relationship with Joe, he's a friend of ours now, and we love him, and we love his wife, Jerry, and his daughter, Gabby, and their dog. We've been over there twice now. We went this March as well. And what we did the first week we were there is we just got all of Joe's stories on tape. Getting past the anecdotes a little bit was difficult because he's got so many bloody anecdotes. Right. But we got all of those on tape. So this March, which was another time where we were able to get out there, my friend Paddy, who is doing it with me, he's a cameraman on tennis. So he's over in the States quite often doing tennis, and he goes there with his kit. So it's just a matter of me flying over, and we save money that way. And we spent another week there, 10 days there, and we interviewed Joe some more, again, getting past the anecdotes a bit this time. We interviewed Roy Arbogast, who worked with him on Jaws, who also worked on Return of the Jedi and The Thing. And, you know, we drove out to Tucson to interview him. We interviewed Taylor Hackford at his house, him and Helen's house in LA.
That's actually, by the way, right near where I live. I know where that house is.
Oh, is it really?
Yes, literally. I'm just like 2 minutes further up the hill. But anyway, I know where that is. So you were very nearby. If you ever come again, please.
Very nearby.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, we'll do. It was interesting, actually, coming out of his house. I noticed out of the turning on the wall of the exit of his house, there's a little Roadrunner plaque there. So I wondered if there was an animation connection, like somebody that must have worked on those cartoons back then. But we did that. We ended up with 9 interviews. We ended up going to we nearly ended up with Spielberg. Actually, his people on the second to last day said, "Steven's in town. Let me get back to you ASAP." And we were like, "Shit, we got to change our flights here. You know, what are we going to do?" And we went down to Greg Nicotero's place. Saw all of his stuff down there. Yeah. And he said, "Oh, are you going to get John Carpenter?" And we said, "Well, we'd love to," because Joe worked on Escape from New York. He said, "Oh, if you'd let me know, and I could have got him down here." So, you know, we're kind of facepalm moments throughout this trip. But as we were there, doors started to open, you know, and everybody who we've spoken to Joe about adores Joe and loves his work and wants to honor the man. You know, and like I said, we were concerned that, you know, he was getting on a little bit, but he told us 5 of his relatives have lived to 103. So there's a good chance he's going to outlive me and Paddy at this stage. But what we've got now is we're in the middle of, you know, making this feature length documentary about Joe, about this man, Joe, that has curated and collected and retained all of this huge body of work. And we've got full access to this archive of Joe's, which thankfully now is very safely stored away. You know, we were just opening drawers and going, "Joe, what's this?" And he's like, "Oh, I didn't know I had that. That's the first ever drawing I did of how the shark might work."
Oh, wow.
You know, and it's a little sketch on this gimbal. And, you know, he's even got his artwork from college, and he worked for a designer. He ended up working for a designer in college that did Liberace's house, and he's got the drawings, the renderings of that. You know, it's just and he's got photographs from Universal, like the original Frankenstein set. These still photographs that he just found in a skip or in a trash can somewhere, and said, "I've got to rescue these." He's definitely a hoarder in that way. So the documentary is really about, you know, why has he kept all this stuff? Where does it really belong? Does it belong in a museum? Is it for his children? You know, he wants to keep it ultimately. But he's getting on in years now, and these, it's given him a chance to kind of really look back at his career and kind of consider what he's achieved, because he's such a humble guy, you know, but he designed the shark, you know, he he picked Devil's Tower for Close Encounters. He scouted the big dirigible hangar for Close Encounters and built that huge landing area set, convinced Spielberg to make all of this stuff. So, yeah, I'm collecting all these stories from Joe, all these stories from his contributors, and we've had a little bit of interest from some producers that might want to be able to sell it for us.
Good.
But it's just we're trying to fit it around our regular jobs is the problem, hence it being a year between visits. And Paddy lives in Northern Ireland, so...
Are you trying for one more visit, like to the States, or you feel like you have? Are you going to try for the Spielbergs?
Yeah, we think we'll do one more visit if we can get. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think the intention is to kind of get it 70% finished, so we've got something to really show those guys and say, this is our intention. We did go down the crowdfunding route. We wanted to make 80,000 to finish it. We got 45, I think it was. What we underestimated with crowdfunding is the huge marketing campaign money that you need to get this stuff in front of people's eyeballs. I did hear of another documentary that spent something like 50,000 to get 250,000. We haven't got that kind of money to do that. We were literally, it's just our time, 7 hours a day, 7 days a week for a month on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, posting these little videos. And I'm quite, pleased with what we managed to do. And of course, we don't get any of that money because we didn't reach our target. That's Kickstarter's deal.
Right.
But what it did do is it got it in front of some people who are interested and willing to maybe invest some money for our next trip. So we're chipping away.
Very cool.
Good.
I just want you to finish it. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, I want to see it.
Good.
Let the record show. By the way, I did kickstart it. I did back it. I mean,
as did I.
It didn't work. But
you did. You both did. Yeah. That's very kind
as
of
did
you.
I. Yes. And the only other thing I wanted to ask, Jamie, thank you. This has been wonderfully informative, and you're a good podcaster. So thank you for doing the heavy lifting for us this week. But I just wanted to ask about, as a fan of making ofs, what are some of your favorite non-Jamie Benning behind the scenes?
What's your favorite
films?
Jamie Benning making of?
That's for you to decide.
Right.
I think.
What's your least favorite? What's your least favorite Jamie Benning making of?
My least favorite.
Is there one you drives you like? You're like, I got to go back and fix that.
Well, I do have that sort of special edition Twitch now and again. Where I think it's in 720 or it's in SD, and I think I need to go back and remaster it or something. But yeah, I don't have that time anymore.
That's fine. That's fine. Don't put a shitty music number in it.
Yes. Yes.
Nobody's going to begrudge you for upscaling it to 4K. There's no fan on earth that it is not the same as putting a shitty musical number in it.
By the way, just this week,
CG
I don't know if
animation.
you guys saw this.
Thank you.
Just this week, in a recent interview, Spielberg actually said out loud, like, it was a mistake to take the removing of the guns.
He apologized for the guns.
He sort of apologized for it. Which, I mean, again, a long journey, but yeah, at least he said it. Yeah,
I think he did like one of those LA Hero nights or something, and there was an audience. They watched ET, and he said they were going to put it on Blu-ray. And he said, "What version do you want to see?" By round of applause, do you want to see the new version? And a few people clapped. Do you want to see the old version? And he said, "Okay, we'll put both versions on the Blu-ray." I think we need to see these films. They're historical artifacts. Yes. I mean, I know an ILM guy who stood up at a 40th anniversary screening and said, "Where's my effing movie?" or "Where's our effing movie?"
Right.
Because his effects work was not in the movie because, it had been plastered over. Favorite making ofs. I mean, I love those Star Wars ones, of course. I think, the real high point, finding some of the films that aren't in this bracket later on, things like The Shining. I love The Shining making on Vivian Kubrick's short. It was shown over here like on Arena on the BBC. And it's a sort of rare insight into the making of a movie where, there were things taken out of it. I believe in speaking to Leon Critch, who you've had on the podcast as well, that there was, I think, something like 40 hours of material that was shot. And, the marketing machine did get involved a little bit with how the movie was going to be, or the story behind the movie was going to be portrayed. And when I asked Lee about, that footage is just sat there, I dream of this footage being sat there and kind of melting away. And he said, well, maybe one day. And there was this twinkle in his eye. And I just thought, oh my God, please please do something with that, Lee. You know, you're our guy on the inside now.
That would be amazing. I mean, you could do a whole series, and that's a movie you could do a whole series on. You don't have to do a 2-hour. You could do a 12-hour. You could do like the Beatles thing on Disney Plus, what Peter Jackson.
You imagine just seeing all of that play out with Kubrick and
just air the whole thing, just cut it together, as Peter Jackson did without, you don't need a narrator.
No, you don't need a narrator.
Yes, let it speak for itself.
Let it be.
Yeah. Absolutely. I guess one of the other ones
nice
is
Beatles pun, Dave.
I guess one of the other ones is Burden of Dreams, the Fitzcarraldo Werner Herzog making of. If you've ever seen that, I mean, it's just insane the level to which they went to make that movie. Really dragging a boat over a mountain.
In the crazy jungle.
Yeah, I saw that on a plane at some point. I think I was deep scrolling through.
I feel like that movie has become the go-to comedy reference for when you're making a movie about a crazy director. Do you know what I mean? That's that's the reference. It's just sort of that's the cliche at this point, but in a great way. There's a reason it is. Any books that jump out at you?
Moments.
Sorry, go
books.
ahead. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, of course, I love Jonathan Rinzler's books. I think the high point for me in terms of those, those books they used to release, I'm looking on my shelf just in front of me here, those books they used to release back in the day, the making of the Derek Taylor Raiders of the Lost Ark one, but the Alan Arnold Empire Strikes Back one, I think, is an absolute high point. It doesn't have any of that cynical marketing take on a movie. There's warts and all in there. There's, Carrie Fisher getting pissed off with Harrison because he's changing lines and she's not been told and she's not allowed to change lines. And I think it really feels like somebody genuinely observing the movie making machine.
It's
and
interesting
I keep buying that book.
It's interesting because obviously he doesn't ever say in the book they're sleeping together, which we now know they were sleeping together. But go back and you reread that book, those sections about the line changes and Harrison working with Kirsch and her finding out. And when you reread it within the realm of, and they were sleeping together, it's a whole other book. It's really fascinating. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, like all of these things that we love, when you add these different layers of context on them over the years, it just becomes richer. And I keep buying the book because I keep wanting to get like a perfect copy of it, because I've got several copies that are just kind of mauled to bits because I've got all my Post-it notes in and things for my research. But I've seen that going for hundreds of dollars now, like a good copy of that. So I guess those two are up there. And Jonathan Rinzler's books, I mean, are a big high point, aren't they?
And just for fans of this particular genre, the two that I would call out, and I know you're a fan too because we've spoken about them before. Charlie de Lauzirika's take on both Blade Runner and Alien. He worked in the Ridley verse for a long time, but those are like feature quality because of course they were made within the sponsored by Ridley, so he had access to everything and had funding and everything, and made after the fact too because they were made for anniversary home video releases on Blu-ray, DVD, whatever. But Dangerous Days for Blade Runner, and then I think it's just the making of Alien, right? I
always feel like Charles has done like God's work with that stuff. I mean, finding that footage that was about to be destroyed and stuck on pallets, shrink wrapped on pallets. I mean, I kind of had nightmares that stuff never got found. And there's things hidden on that Blu-ray that I'm sure a lot of people don't know are there. There's like a whole kind of chronological 30-minute reel of takes that were not used in the movie, just all spliced together. It's like an alternate version of Blade Runner in like 30 minutes. And I need to go digging. By accident, just going through menu, deep in these menus. And Charles has been on the podcast too, and is a guy whose work I think is the real high standard. Yeah,
he's incredible. We've crossed paths at various times at Comic-Con and whatever else because he's a fan and just interesting, great stories and all that. And Blade Runner is my favorite movie, so I'm always fascinated by that those particular stories.
One last question, Jimmy. Obviously, we're talking a lot about genre movies for the most part. We're talking about these big genre movies, but you have referenced in there, like you almost did Chinatown, which obviously falls out of it. Do you follow along? Again, I'm not even talking about necessarily like like you're going to do it. But do you follow along with like, you know, you hear these stories like right now they've been trying to find for years. There's like a quest down in like Brazil for some Orson Welles guys to try and find his lost cut of the Magnificent Ambersons. Like, do you kind of pay attention to that kind of stuff? Are you into sort of lost footage and film, I don't know, alternate film or film restoration in general? Like, do you kind of keep your finger on that pulse a bit? Like, or is it really the genre stuff?
It's mostly the genre stuff, but I do definitely keep my finger on that because I kind of share that enthusiasm, even though their enthusiasm is in a slightly different part of that world. But you know, I do get that, and you know, I've definitely bought Blu-rays that have multiple versions of movies, or has a new version of a movie or a new cut of a movie. You know, I think one of the stories that I still really hope, and I have my fingers crossed that the footage will be found, is the guy that what was his name? Kenneth Godwin. I had him on the podcast in my first year. He was tasked by David Lynch to shoot the behind the scenes on Dune.
Oh, that 3-hour Dune that they keep talking about, or whatever that would be. Yeah.
And he had like a Panasonic HD camera that was the best quality you could get at the time. I think they sponsored it. And he shot for weeks and weeks and weeks at the studio.
Behind the scenes stuff.
Behind the scenes. And then Dino De Laurentiis Bindil.
Wow.
He just chucked it in the trash. And to this day, you know, Charles and I have talked about this before. De Lauzarico have talked about this. You know, we both have these sort of nightmares or, you know, waking dreams where we kind of sit up and go, you know, this footage has got to be out there somewhere, you know, please somebody find it, because who knows what's lurking, you know. It's like for you guys with these props, like you say, it could be in someone's attic or basement. Or
yeah. Right now,
you look at the Princess Leia dress, they used it as like, didn't somebody use it as like a fancy dress or something? Or the Mary Poppins bag that was used to, people were traveling with it.
Yeah,
you know,
they were using it as a bag. Yeah,
tucked away. Yeah, as a bag. Who would have thought it?
Yeah, I mean, Mark Hamill's son, I think probably Nathan, took his lightsaber to a park to play with and left it there. It's like,
I didn't know that.
It's in some sandbox somewhere in Southern California.
Amazing. Yeah, so I still hope that I do follow that stuff. I think it's important. I'm all about. I do understand the need for film preservation and history, and having these versions. I think there's nothing more informative in the filmmaking process of seeing the iterative nature of film, you know, the different versions that they go through, which is why I still hope that one day Disney will put those original movies, and maybe even, you know, that John Jimpson cut of Star Wars in black and white, you know, with all the long takes and the you know, the non-reshot Cantina aliens. I'd love to see all that stuff, because it just reminds you how good a movie it turned out to be, you know.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, to me, you know, now waxing nostalgic as a increasingly older, grumpier man, film today is just, it's different. It's a corporate venture. You have these studio-based making of crews that are on set with you. I mean, our making of crew on House of the Dragon is wonderful, but it's a marketing tool. I mean, they're never going to show me, you know, having it out with with one of the directors or an actor. Not that really happens that often, but you know, things happen, and it's not a glossy process from beginning to end, and it will never be seen. And to me, part of that is the fun of, you know, the story and really the angst that goes into making these things. And I don't know, just the imperfection of it all and how these things come together. And there's such a wonderful, rich history with that for all these films that the three of us love so much that just doesn't really exist today. And I know, like, you know, the kids that are growing up today, you know, the kids that's 16 right now watching, you know, my show in 30 years will feel about it the way that I did about Return of the Jedi, whatever. I get all that, but there's just something about the way things were made back then, and then the excavation of the history of it later for the video format that did not exist when the movie was made, and making a thing for this, you know, future video format. I just love all that stuff. And you know, you said collecting stories. I love that part of our world, even though it's not a physical object.
Well, there's also things that people, of course, pay no attention to, which is like, or just because it doesn't exist anymore. Like when they used to put the movies on like ABC for the ABC Sunday night movie, and they would pad it out with like an extra half an hour because they needed the length, and like, you know, that quote unquote footage from like Wrath of Khan or the Superman movies and stuff, where like, years later, I'm like, I think I saw something that was different, but I don't even know what I saw, but that just doesn't exist anymore, or occasionally, I guess the TNT or the TBS cut where they had to cut something like for language. So they added other footage to keep the length. Like that stuff is interesting. And by the way, with the Marvel movies, we constantly are hearing about massive rewrites and reshoots, but they never let us into that process, which I think is a shame, or at least would be interesting to me on the ones certainly that work, where you could kind of go, well, I think I like this movie. I wonder what the reshoot was. But clearly they're not interested in us being a part of it.
There was a famous book, infamous book, written about a very famous movie franchise that got rebooted some 30 years after the fact, 35 years after the fact. And there was this entire making of book that told the whole complicated story of how this very complicated movie got together. And it was written and laid out. And I mean, it was everything but actually printed and bound into a book. And it was just murdered because it was decided that the story, though true, did not carry the the corporate values of the whatever mouse-based corporation it was associated with. And now that story, even though it's part of the history of not only that film but also the larger franchise, is just gone. And I think that that's it doesn't have to be that way. Not everything has to be made
that book,
in
though,
this
that book
perfect
has to be out there
sealed
somewhere. It's like the lost footage from Dune. That book is out there somewhere.
Yeah, it's the Amberson's cut.
This is my next quest. I do know what you're talking about as well, and it would be fascinating to find. But I think it was actually a Roddy McDowall clip that I found where he said the stories behind the making of movies are not interesting unless 40 years have passed. Yeah, and I think there is something to that.
Agree.
That may be true. Maybe true.
Well, on that point,
the game.
So the game. So Jamie, if you've listened before, we play this game at the end of every episode. We pick a movie, usually with some relevance to the episode we were talking about, and then we talk about if there's anything that you can have to take home from the movie, anything at all. You walk on set, and the director says, "Please, take something for your collection." What would that be? So for this, I think the movie, because it was your original and I think it's your favorite. I think it has to be
Brett
specifically
Ratner's Hercules.
I've got loads of that stuff. I just can't get rid of it.
Very good. Yeah. Thank you. No, I was going to say the lesser known Empire Strikes Back.
Ooh, what would I take? I would probably take from the making of the Empire Strikes Back the helmet, Darth Vader helmet that Kenny Baker wore on the set for some press photographs. There was actually the original Star Wars Darth Vader helmet.
Oh, all right. Yeah, okay.
It's very specific. It has almost nothing. Yeah. So I love that you have chosen something based on a behind-the-scenes photo. I like that.
And purely based on its value as well.
On brand, yes. Well, the value too, but yes. Now, would you keep it or would you sell it in auction and make all the dream documentaries you've ever wanted to make?
Yeah, I mean, I go through these cycles with my work as a freelancer, which go up and down. I have, my wife says, "You're doing it again." I said, "What am I doing?" She says, "You're looking at the shelves to see what you can sell, aren't you?" So I don't know. I think I would like to keep it. I think I would like to retain it. Yeah. It'd be cool to have just one item from my favorite movie. And I think I'd hold on to that.
That'd be a good one.
So Dave,
a good one.
Something that you don't already have from The Empire Strikes Back. What would you?
Boy, that's very.
You actually
tough.
like Empire. I feel like is always the collection that people don't have things from. It's the movie. Like there's a lot of stuff out there from Star Wars. There's tons of stuff out there from Jedi. Empire always feels like it kind of falls between the cracks. And there is stuff, but it just anyway. Dave has an incredible Empire Strikes Back collection.
I'm trying to think
what
would be
that you need.
What would be really cool that would be from very specifically Empire. I'm just trying to think.
The ice cream maker. No.
Yes, exactly that. I mean, I love the other bounty hunters. That would be definitely an area my brain goes to, just because that scene, and again, even before we knew all their crazy names and everything, but just the times, the action figures, but also how menacing that seemed at the time. Like it really seemed scary, like that these guys were like badasses and they were gonna get them and that kind of stuff.
I love the the juxtaposition of like the super sort of triumph of the will order of the Nazi Star Destroyer, and then with like them just standing in it, and it just seems like, oh God, a line has been crossed here. I actually referenced that scene specifically. I'm a child, so I'm always referencing moments from Star Wars and Indiana Jones when I'm making my own show. But I referenced that scene very specifically for something
Ryan,
we were doing this year.
Podcast. It's fine, right? He's got a podcast.
Yeah. Somebody very disappointingly said that. I'm standing next to Alan Taylor, who's like his favorite director is Tarkovsky, and he's like he's always making these references. I was like, yes, but in Empire Strikes Back. That's how we found our relationship.
Where I was ultimately going to go. I was ultimately going to go out, and I don't even know what the right thing is. My absolute favorite sequence in all three of the movies, absolutely, is the Millennium Falcon in the asteroid belt. It's just I love it. I love everything about it. It is an action sequence that is so perfectly designed for the character of Han Solo, for all of them, but obviously specifically the flying into the thing you shouldn't fly into. And so I guess on the dream level, that the Falcon miniature used for that sequence, but honestly,
I thought you were going to say Ken Ralston's potato.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say, but honestly, at this point, I'll take an asteroid. I'll take anything from any part of it. But yeah, I do love it. So I guess that's my vague
good answer.
How about you?
That's a good answer.
Good answer. I mean, I'm torn. I love the AT-AT. I think it might be my other than the shuttle from Jedi, Dave will roll his eyes. I think it's my favorite sort of non-Millennium Falcon vehicle in the series. But I just love the AT. I love the idea of a walking tank, and it's so like retro future, and I just love all that. So that would be one. But because it's my favorite character, and because it always comes up every time we talk about Star Wars, it's my favorite piece from my favorite of the three movies, from my favorite character in my favorite moment of the character. And that's when I've always loved, to me, the most perfect character moment for Han Solo is when he walks into the dining hall and the door is open. He sees Vader. He doesn't even think for a minute. Right. He doesn't surrender. He just immediately draws on him. So I want that gun from that moment, because I've always wanted a solo blaster. That would be my holy grail dream, sell all the rest and keep
the one that goes
prop.
flying across. That one. Yeah.
Exactly. The special effects one. Yeah. That's
that'd be cool.
That's the one.
That'd be damn cool.
I mean, other than drawing down on Greedo in the first movie, which has now been fucking ruined, that to me, this I think is actually a better character moment for him, because it just shows, it shows the daring, crazy, heroic side of him in half second without a line of dialogue. So that's the piece for me.
It's a good one. Jamie, tell people where they can obviously find your current podcast, obviously is on, but also where do the old cool things reside if they want to check out some of the older work? Like where tell people things. Yes.
Yeah. So the podcast is everywhere, the Filmumentaries podcast. And then prior to that, if you go on to vimeo.com and search for Filmumentaries, or if you just go on Google and search Filmumentaries Vimeo, I think it doesn't find my stuff if you go to Vimeo's search engine. But Building Empire, Return to Jedi, Raiders in the Lost Ark, Star Wars Begins, Inside Jaws are all there, along with the short form ones that I've done as well. There's a few other videos with people who worked on Back to the Future and Return of the Jedi as well, some other short form stuff, and also one with the guy who played Biggs, Garrick Hagon, is on there as well.
Very cool.
Great.
So yeah, that's all still knocking about somewhere.
And they can follow you on social media to get the latest on the Joe Alves stuff and everything else. Where can that be?
So at Joe Alves Doc is the official handle for that on Twitter and Instagram. And then at Jamie SWB is my old stuck with Twitter handle, Star Wars Begins, SWB. On Twitter, and Filmumentaries on Instagram as well.
If you renamed yourself and gave yourself a middle name with an S and a W, like Jamie St. Winston Benning, then it would be your initials. So that would work too.
That's a good point.
Star Wars Begins. Something to think about.
Something to think about.
That to the list for Monday morning.
Your Star Wars name. I'll put into right there.
Jam Ben, something. Jam Ben. Yeah.
Thank you, Jamie. This has been really awesome.
Thank you. Yeah.
Great interview. And please go listen to Filmumentaries. Just recently, Jamie did a great episode with the great Mike Dawson, who's a special effects legend who works on my show now, but don't pay attention to that stuff. Listen to his stories
winning.
about, yes, now BAFTA winning special effects.
What did he win for? What did he win for?
Special effects for House of the Dragon.
Oh, wonderful! Congratulations.
His first BAFTA. The guy worked on the entire indie trilogy, Return of the Jedi.
He started on Superman, didn't he? Yeah,
Superman the movie, and he's never won a BAFTA before, and he won for us. So very, very, Mike is awesome. So he was just on, but yeah, a lot of great, really cool, I would say deep dive interviews with people you never hear from.
Right.
You never hear from
but again, prop collectors,
the camera operator, or the costume designer, and Nilo, your great interview with him from from Jedi.
But again,
I
this
love
is
all
the
those
best way
details.
to do your research, because you will hear stories about the making of scenes, and it's not about prop collecting, but they will reference points about, like, oh, we had 6 of those or something like that. There is information to be gleaned, and that's what I love about it, is you get to actually hear about how these things were used, and it does definitely help you as you're sort of tracking stuff down to kind of go, well, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. That guy said it was used this way. Why are whatever it is. But again, no better way to do your research than with your stuff, Jamie. It's fantastic. So
I would thank you. And if possible, I'd like to plug one last thing.
Go for
otherwise
it.
My co-author was going to kill me. Yeah. For the last year, we've been putting together something we're calling Return of the Jedi, the Unauthorized Timeline, 1976 to 2023. So it's the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi on the 25th of May this year. And we're celebrating that by collecting together every single date that we can in order from pre-production, production, post-production, all the way up to the anniversary, as a reference book for geeks like us to dive into, to find out when things happened and how they happened.
Okay.
It's not a Rinsler competitor, it's really kind of dialing in.
It's a Rinsler companion. It's a companion.
Yeah, sure. And we're gleaning things from Jonathan's books and from the behind the scenes book from back in the day, and just about everywhere we can find storyboards, call sheets, Blue Harvest call sheets, all that kind of stuff. And we've got an introduction from a senior member of the Return of the Jedi crew, and we have diary extracts from 2 members of the crew that have never been published anywhere before.
And where might someone find this?
May.
Okay, so it's coming out on the 25th of May. Where?
Yeah. You can't pre-order because it's on a self-publish on Amazon. They don't allow you to do that. But if you go to JediTimeline.com, you can register your interest. You'll get an email, which you need to click on to confirm. And then on the 25th, you'll get an email from us, me and my co-author Justin Berger, saying this is where you can buy it. And there'll be a soft cover version in monochrome with a color cover. And there'll be a hardback version with a color cover and a color inside as well. So
Put me down for one of each, God damn it. One of each.
Sure. Signed copy,
Yeah.
When you see my name, you just sign those. When you see my name, it's good. It's good. But
now I know where you live near. I just shout your name and throw a book in that direction. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yes, thank you, Jamie. And as always, find us at all social media outlets at Props Podcast. Email us at dreamsaremadeofpodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe. Download and rate us 5 stars, review, and tell all of your friends about your favorite collecting podcast. And go to Prop Store and click on Buy Now and use your Ryan10 code to get your 10% discount.
Ryan has a podcast, everyone.
Yes, but we'll see you next week on The Stuff Dreams Are Made Of. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.